Penny.
Okay, just got back from the cinema, saw the Spider-Man Homecoming movie, which was good. It was good. It was like it's a standard superhero movie. No surprises, a couple small surprises, no major surprises. Basic three-act structure, big fight with the villain at the end. You know how these movies go. And it was good for what it was. I think, like out of 10 stars, give it a 6 or something, like a solid, competently made movie. Not anything that's going to change anyone's world, but like it's a good movie at what it does for its genre. There's not much to spoil here, but I'm going to spoil stuff, so just forewarned. So this movie takes Peter Parker and makes him a high school student again. Now, if you follow this stuff, I guess you have to be a bit of a nerd to be at all concerned about this stuff. But the Spider-Man character, when it was originally created back in 1963 by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, was a high school student. And they did age him up as the comics went on. I think when did he graduate from high school? I think he graduated from high school 4 years later or something like that. Sometime in the mid-60s he graduated from high school. And then I think he spent 10 years in university or something, because comic book time isn't exactly equal to our time. And then kind of, in the 80s and 90s when I was growing up and had some access to comic books, he was a man with a job. So I think people of my generation who read comic books grew up with Peter Parker as an adult, a young adult, but still he had a job and he was married and stuff like that. But the original incarnation of the character was a high school student. Nowadays, because Marvel's kind of reprinted all their old backlogs on kind of the essential volumes, it's never been easier to go back and reread those old original comics, which I did. I reread a ton of them when I was doing my master's degree, because they had them all in the library at the university. I think, why were comic books in a university library? I think the logic was that they had some cultural importance, and I guess they do. So I go in there and I was going to work on my thesis, and I get 20 minutes into my thesis, and then I just go and I read those comic books. It was terrible. Anyways, if you go back and you reread those old comic books from the 1960s, Spider-Man is kind of most famous for combining the problems of teenage angst, high school student, and his, Aunt May is worried that he's out too late at night, and girls he likes don't like him, and doesn't have enough money, and there's a rich kid at school who has more money than him, and kind of all the problems of the high school students. So ever since then, fans have always wanted Spider-Man to be a high school student. Fans don't like it when he's aged up too much. Even though the character in the comics did eventually age up, people always kind of think of the classic Spider-Man as being a high school student. It's difficult to do with movies though, and I know everybody wants Peter Parker to be a high school student in the movies, but it's difficult for at least a couple reasons that I can think of. One is, I think, to get a major movie financed, you have to have a bankable star, and there aren't that many 15-year-olds who have that kind of star quality yet. And I think maybe very few 15-year-olds have the acting chops for it, because I think I'm not an actor myself, but I think people do develop their craft with age. And then secondly, even if you do get somebody who can pass as a high school student, by the time you have 4 movies over 12 years, but by the end of that series they no longer look like a high school student. I think that's what happened with Tobey Maguire. I think he was 30 when he was first cast as Spider-Man, and it was, okay, he kind of looks like a high school student, but then by the third movie he just did not look young at all. Now this time they've got Tom Holland, who's 21. I'd never heard of him before these movies came out. His first appearance was in Civil War. But like 21, you know, he looks like a high school student. They push it a little bit in the movie. And in the movie, he says he's 15. Other characters at one point mistake him for being 14. I think Iron Man says, like, what are you, 14? He says, no, I'm 15. He doesn't look 14 or 15. They're trying to get away with too much there. The actor's 21. He looks believable at maybe 17 or 18. They were getting greedy when they tried to say he was 14 and 15. But yeah, you know, when you watch these movies, you have a little bit of suspension of disbelief. You're like, all right, I know he's really 21, but I'm going to pretend he's 15. And you know, we do this all the time when we go to movies. So you've got to give it that. He's playing a character who's supposed to be 15. Now what's going to happen, because Tom Holland is 21 now, by the time they finish making all these Spider-Man movies, he'll probably be 35. So, you know, they'll probably have to age the character up as they did in the comic books. But for this movie, at least, we get kind of Peter Parker back in the high school setting where the character first became famous, interacting with all his high school friends. Now, those people who are familiar with the comic books, I think not all the characters you expect to see are going to be in there. Like there's no Harry Osborn and stuff like that. Although, I guess if you want to get, you know, if you really want to get nerdy about this, Harry Osborn and I think MJ didn't come into the comics until Peter Parker was already in university. The Liz Allen character that they have in here was actually, I think, the girl he was interested in high school. But like, it's a different kind of supporting cast than was in the comic books when Peter Parker was in high school in the 1960s. But who cares? He's back in high school, and this is part of the Avengers universe now, even though it's produced by Sony. So you have all these references to the Avengers, and then Tony Stark and Pepper Potts and Happy Hogan are all in the movie. Now, some people complain about how a portion of each Marvel movie is devoted to universe building, which kind of takes away from that one movie itself. I don't care. In fact, I think it's kind of cool that these are all interconnected. Nobody's ever done that before. Nobody's ever done that on this scale before. And I always, you know, when I was reading comic books as a kid, one of the things I thought was really cool was that it was never a self-contained story. It was always this big, sprawling story. And I know they did that because they wanted your money and you had to shell out for it. But I just thought it was really cool that this story kind of rippled across all these different comic books. In the same way, I kind of think it's cool that like this story kind of ripples across several different movies here. Some people don't like that, and if you don't like that, you're not going to like, I don't know, about 10% of this movie is kind of tie-ins with Iron Man and stuff like that. Speaking of the tie-ins with Iron Man, I like the fact that they integrated Iron Man and the Avengers universe into this movie. I didn't like that they essentially made Spider-Man into Iron Man. One of the criticisms I have of these Iron Man movies, especially kind of as you go along into like Iron Man 2 and 3, is like these suits, they're just too much. Like the suits can do everything. And I've always been like, geez, I don't want the suits to be able to do everything. You know, it's cool he can fly around and blast things, but like, I don't want the suits to solve every problem he has. That's just kind of lazy writing. Like, I want the hero to have to kind of use his wits to kind of solve these problems, rather than like, oh, the suit has a function for this. Because Tony Stark is supplying Spider-Man with his suits, now Spider-Man's suit has can solve every problem he has. And I thought, oh, geez, it's bad enough we have like one character in the Marvel Universe whose suit can do absolutely everything for him. We don't need Spider-Man to also have like an Iron Man-esque suit. But, again, I warned you I was going to spoil things. That suit gets taken away from him during this movie. And then he goes back to being the low-tech Spider-Man. And so I was all set to complain about that, but then they took it away, and everything's okay now, I think. I don't know, like, we'll see in the next incarnation if he's showing up in the super high-tech suit or not. But I think the plan was to kind of give him the high-tech thing and then go back to the low-tech, and hopefully they'll keep him low-tech in the future again. For this one movie, though, it worked well. You know, he had the high-tech suit, but then the end of the movie, he was back to being the low-tech Spider-Man. The action scenes in this movie were good. Now, I mention this because, like, action movies recently, I don't know, maybe I'm just getting old and I'm harder to impress, but I've been watching a lot of movies recently where the action scenes have just kind of bored me. There's no tension in them. And in fact, I was even watching this YouTube video lately, why action movies suck. You've probably seen it if you spend a lot of time on YouTube. It's one of these popular videos. Because like there's no tension in them. This movie did a good job of like tension, and Tom Holland does a good job of selling it. Like you can see on his face that his character believes he's in danger. He does a really good job of looking worried or looking like there's actually stakes, and the tension is kind of built up. And even though a fair amount of this is just kind of CGI, like all movies are, I think the tension is there. Now, again, it's not a thing that's gonna rock your world or something, but it's decent for what it is. Just kind of good, decent action scenes, fast-paced. Iron Man kind of comes in to save the day twice, so that's it's cool that they're tying Iron Man into this universe. It's also a Deus Ex Machina. Is that how you pronounce it? You know, it's cheating a little bit. But the final scene, Spider-Man does it all on his own. The twist, which I'm going to spoil, there is one twist in this movie, and it turns out that, I warned you I was going to spoil things, right? Okay. So it turns out that the villain is the dad of the girl that Spider-Man likes. Now I don't think this was from the comics, but it's the kind of thing that would have been in the comics. Because in the original 1960s comics, it did turn out that Spider-Man's best friend and roommate, his dad was a supervillain. Here they've kind of changed it around a little bit so that the girl that Spider-Man likes, her dad is a supervillain. So they're messing with the source material a little bit, but they're staying kind of very faithful to the spirit of the source material, where it's always like awkward moments meeting the girl's dad, and this is a way I think they made that kind of teen angst and the superhero story kind of go together really well, because like now it's really awkward because you're meeting the girlfriend's dad and the dad is a supervillain. I mean, it's cheesy, but the Spider-Man comics at their best have kind of been used as like a metaphor for like the problems of teenagers played out through like a superhero drama, and then this is just taking that to it's a good example of kind of continuing the metaphor. So that tense scene when he's driving them in the car is a good example of I think I've said what I want to say. It's a good example of the metaphor. It's a good example of what these Spider-Man movies do best. The cast was diverse. Now, I was reading this article that was kind of saying, yeah, the supporting cast is diverse, but so what? It's just another kind of the black friend cliche or the Asian sidekick cliche, where all the supporting cast is diverse and the main guy's still a white guy. And I think this is especially an issue because there had been a campaign to get Miles Morales as Spider-Man. Miles Morales is a black Spider-Man in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, if you read the comics. If you don't read the comics, basically there's another Spider-Man who's black. And there had been a fan campaign to get him as a Spider-Man here to have more diversity in the Marvel Universe. they didn't go this way. But like Tom Holland, again, I never heard of him before, but like he's just so likable that it's really hard for me to be upset about this. You know, like it's a missed opportunity, but Tom Holland was just really likable in this movies. So no complaining about it. I think basically that's all I have to say about this. It's a good movie. It's formulaic, so like you get what you expect. It's just another superhero movie. So if you're sick of these superhero movies already, you're gonna be sick of this one. But like if you've got enough room for one more superhero movie, this does it well. It's a good enough movie.
This is